The scent of roasting groundnuts filled the morning air as her hands trembled over a pot of steaming rice. 12 years of waiting, packed into one boiling breath. The sun had barely risen over Ayetoro, the dusty little town where Mama Efe's market stall had stood for over a decade. Her neighbors called her Mama, even though she bore no children. She wasn't old, not really, maybe in her late 30s, but the weight of time lived on her face. Her eyes especially looked older than her years, deep, knowing, tired. She was up before the roosters that morning, scrubbing the front of her compound with palm fronds dipped in water and ash, the way she used to when he came back from school visits. The red clay of her walls had been patched. New calico hung by the doorway. A little plastic chair sat at the entrance, its blue back faded by the sun, waiting for him to sit. A man she hadn't seen in 12 years. His name was Tajuddin, and once, long ago, when they both had nothing, he had called her his world. They met when he was just a tall, awkward university boy, sent from Lagos to live with an uncle. The uncle drank himself into debt, and the boy was left hungry, sleeping in borrowed corners. That's when he found her, or she found him. She was already running her small food stall then, with a wide smile and hands that made magic from beans and fire. He came first as a beggar, then as a helper, and then, slowly, something more. She fed him, clothed him, paid for his exam forms. She even sold her mother's gold earring to buy him a suit for his NYSC passing out parade. They were lovers, though no one dared speak it out loud. In the town's eyes, she was Mama Efe, a kind older woman, and he was the boy she had taken in, a motherly sacrifice. They never corrected anyone. It was safer that way. Safer to keep love quiet. But in the silence of her one-room home, on a bamboo mat warmed by kerosene lantern light, he whispered different names into her skin. My wife, my destiny. When I make it, I'll come back for you. And then he left. At first, the letters came monthly, then fewer, then none, but she waited. For 12 years, she built her life around his promise. She didn't date, didn't flirt. She rejected men, decent, hard-working men, because her heart was already claimed by a man who once kissed her knuckles and promised her forever. And now, after all this time, word reached her. He is coming back. Tomorrow. He was successful now, they said. A big man in Abuja, he owned real estate. He drove a Lexus. His mother had died, and he was coming to claim the house she left behind. That house, his mother's house, sat just 3 compounds from hers. A coincidence that felt like fate. So she cooked. She cooked like her hands were spelling out a prayer. Jollof rice, fried plantain, goat meat pepper soup. She slaughtered one of her own chickens, the fat white one she had been saving for Christmas. Her wrappers were washed, her hair plaited fresh. She lit incense in the corners of her room and whispered thanks to her ancestors. Everyone in Ayetoro knew. He's coming back, they said. The one Mama Efe waited for. There was laughter behind the words, but she ignored it. She had waited too long to let bitterness steal this moment. Morning broke. The car pulled in just before 10 a.m. She was kneeling at the compound gate, washing the concrete path with water and Dettol, when the sound of tires on gravel stopped her breath. A black Lexus SUV. Shining. Foreign plate number. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and ran, barefoot through the dirt, heart thudding. He stepped out of the car wearing a crisp white caftan, gold watch glinting in the sun. He looked taller, broader, like Lagos had fed him something she couldn't. He turned. Their eyes met. And for a split second, just one, the world paused. Then a second car door opened. A woman stepped out. Dark-skinned, elegant, not much younger than Mama Efe. And then came 2 children, a boy and a girl, maybe 8 or 10 years old, bouncing out with weekend bags slung over their shoulders. The silence in the compound was brutal. He smiled. A shallow, polite smile. This is Efe, he said, gesturing towards her as if presenting a distant cousin. She used to take care of me when I was young. The woman, his wife, nodded warmly. Ah, thank you, Ma. My husband has told me so much about this place. Mama Efe's smile cracked, but did not fall. Her eyes locked on him. He didn't flinch. She stood straighter, lifting the pot of jollof like a host at a funeral. Come inside, she said. Food is ready. They ate. All of them. The children loved the rice. His wife praised the soup. He said little. She watched him with every bite, searching for signs of regret, of shame, anything human. She found none. The whole compound was watching, so she smiled. She laughed. She clapped when the children danced and fetched drinks when the sun got too high. In public, she wore her joy like a costume stitched from pride. But that night, when the lanterns dimmed and the visitors slept in his mother's house, she sat alone on her bed staring at the space beside her. The bed where he once swore eternal love. The same bed she hadn't shared with another man since. The food sat untouched. The incense had gone out. And her hands, the same hands that once bathed his wounds and paid his fees, now sat clenched and empty in her lap. She didn't cry. Not yet. She simply sat. And somewhere outside, a hyena howled in the distance. At sunrise, she rose before the town could speak her name with pity. She wore her white wrapper like armor and carried silence like a shield. The market opened slowly that morning, with the sound of rusted iron shutters dragging across concrete. Chickens clucked. A woman selling tomatoes coughed into her scarf. A wheelbarrow creaked as it rolled past her compound. Life was normal for everyone else, but not for Mama Efe. She had not slept. She had sat upright all night, her feet flat on the earth, eyes fixed on the flickering flame of her last candle. Her walls, once decorated with wedding hopes, now looked like cracked clay. Her chest burned, not with rage, but with something more bitter, disbelief. 12 years. 12 years of prayers, hunger, loneliness, of telling herself she was a wife in waiting, a bride without a ring. And now, she was nothing more than a passing thanks and a plate of rice to a man who had once wept in her arms. She didn't scream. She didn't curse the sky. Instead, she stood, washed her face, wrapped her head in white, and stepped into the day as if it owed her a debt. She walked to the market, not to sell, not today, but to look at it one last time. The stall that had fed him, the stall she had grown from nothing. The small wooden table still bore the scratch marks from the day she spilled palm oil and slipped. Her old basin still had the tiny crack near the rim. She touched it all. Then she turned to Basira, the woman next to her. I want to sell, Mama Efe said, her voice even. Basira blinked. Sell what? This, she said. The stall. The table. The pots. Everything. The woman stared, confused. But he just came back, Abi? You don't want to— I'm not asking for advice, Eve said quietly. Just help me find a buyer. By evening, the stall was gone, packed up and taken by a younger woman who paid her in full. 50,000 naira. Not even close to what it was worth, but enough. Enough to say it's over. Back home, laughter poured from his mother's compound. Children's feet slapped the sand as they played catch. His wife's voice floated through the air, cheerful and light, calling out for hot water. Neighbors dropped by with yams and greetings. Someone was frying a kara in the yard. She didn't go over. She didn't wave. She simply gathered her things, packed 2 old suitcases, and locked her door. No goodbye, but fate is crueler than silence. That night, around 10 p.m., she heard a knock, soft, hesitant. She didn't move. The knock came again. Eve, a voice said, low and familiar. She knew that voice. She opened the door just wide enough to see him. He stood there alone, in a plain t-shirt, barefoot, holding a sachet of pure water. I didn't know how to face you, he said. She didn't answer. I meant to come back sooner, but life happened. Things changed. She let the door hang half open, body still hidden. I married her 6 years ago, he continued. She helped me get a contract when I was struggling. I thought it would be quick. I thought I'd still come back to you. But then the kids came and you buried me alive, she said, her voice flat. He stepped back. She opened the door wider now, letting the moonlight frame her. You let the world believe I was your mother. You never claimed me, and after all these years you came back and introduced me like I was a housemaid who once gave you food. I'm sorry, Aoife. Don't say sorry. It means nothing here. His lips parted, searching for the right words. But there were none. I waited for you like a widow, she whispered, only to find out the funeral already happened. The wedding already happened. I was mourning a man who had already moved on. He reached out gently. Please. I didn't know how to fix it. She looked down at his hand. Once those fingers held her like they were made of truth. Now, they just looked like skin. There's nothing to fix, she said. Then she did something he wasn't prepared for. She smiled. Not a happy smile, but a calm, cutting one. A smile that said, I see now. I was never your beginning, only your detour. I sold the stall, she said. His eyes widened. Why? Because the woman who built that stall was a fool in love. I buried her this morning. She closed the door. He stood there for a while, maybe hoping she'd reopen it. But she didn't. When she finally slept, it was deep, dreamless, like someone who had finally exhaled after years of holding her breath. The next day, she walked to the bus station. Her suitcases were light. She carried no souvenirs of him. Only a few clothes, her mother's old Bible, and a tin box of savings. Where to? The driver asked. She looked at the road stretching in both directions. Where people don't know my name, she said. As the bus pulled away, Ayetoro shrank behind her. The compound, the market, the man, all of it, smaller now, like things seen in the rear view of a moving car. She did not look back, not once. And in the wind that blew through the cracked window, she felt something she hadn't felt in 12 years. Freedom. He watched the bus disappear down the red earth road, and for the first time in years, he let the tears come. Not because she left, but because he didn't deserve her to stay. The compound had returned to its usual rhythm. The neighbors had stopped whispering, the children were back in school, and his wife had taken the kids back to Abuja, promising to return in a month when the renovations were done. But Tajuddin remained behind. Alone in his late mother's house, he walked the same creaking floors he used to crawl as a child, now haunted by ghosts that were not dead, only disappointed. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Eve's voice echoed in every room, even though she'd never set foot in this house. Her laughter, her scolding, the soft way she used to say, eat small now. You've worked too hard today. 12 years. He sat in the parlor, lights off, fan spinning lazily above his head, and opened the worn-out leather pouch he hadn't touched in years. Inside were old photos, letters, receipts, a dried flower she once tucked behind his ear when he came back from school exams. At the bottom of the pouch was a letter, never sent. Dated 8 years ago. The ink faded, the corner stained with oil. My dearest Eve, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't even know how to begin this. I have made a decision that will change everything, and it is not one I am proud of. His hand trembled as he read. He remembered exactly where he wrote it, on the floor of a cheap one-room apartment in Kubwa, light bulb flickering above, rain dripping through a cracked window. He had just received the biggest news of his life. He'd won a government contract, a clean deal, his first real break. But there was a condition. The woman who helped him get the deal, Madame Tenney, didn't do favors for free. She was the director's cousin. Smart, ruthless. She saw potential in Tajuddin, but not as a businessman. She wanted him close, personally close, and she made that clear. If you want this deal, you'll be mine. He refused at first, but the hunger was real. His rent was due. He owed debts. And Efe had just sent him her last N10,000 to pay for a proposal design. He couldn't tell her the truth. Couldn't let her carry the weight of his failure again. So he made a choice. He took the deal. married Madame Tenny 6 months later. By then, she was pregnant. It was supposed to be temporary, he told himself. Just long enough to stand on his feet, make enough money, and then go back for Eve. He planned to build her a house. Start over. Fix everything, but life does not wait for guilty men to gather courage. Tenny was no fool. She kept him close, watched his calls, filtered his visitors. She controlled the accounts, the staff, the contracts. In public, they were a power couple. In private, they were two strangers raising kids under a golden roof. And Aoife? He couldn't bear to tell her the truth. Every time he picked up the phone, his tongue turned to ash. How do you say, "I used your love to climb out of poverty and married another to stay there"? So he said nothing. The years passed. He watched her age through whispers. A friend from Ayetoro once told him, "Mama Efe still hasn't married. Oh, she's still waiting." He laughed it off on the call, but afterwards, he drank himself to sleep. He thought the silence would bury the shame, but it didn't, and now she knew. And still, she didn't curse him. She didn't slap him or drag his name through the market. She just left. And somehow that was worse than hatred. Her absence was heavier than her presence. He stood up, pacing the room. Maybe if he told her everything, the truth behind his betrayal, she might understand. Maybe if she knew it wasn't about love, but survival. But then again, was that really better? That he sold her out for a contract? That he let another woman claim what Aoife had built? No, the truth wasn't noble. It was cowardice, wrapped in good intentions. He opened his old laptop. The screen flickered before coming to life. The first thing he saw was a photo, him and Aoife, taken in front of her stall, back when they still dreamt like fools. He zoomed in. She was laughing in the picture. Not just smiling. Laughing with her whole face, the kind of laugh that made people around her feel like life was still good. She was wearing her favorite wrapper, the blue one with yellow sunflowers. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder. He stared at that hand for a long time. How many times had those fingers fed him, bathed him, held him when he cried after rejection letters? How many times had she gone hungry so he could eat? He shut the laptop, walked outside, stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, she was building a new life, free of him, and for once, he didn't try to imagine her alone or sad. He imagined her smiling, laughing again, maybe beside someone better, someone brave enough to stay. And then, quietly, he spoke into the night. "I'm sorry. Aoife." No one replied, but maybe that was the point. Not all apologies are meant to be received. Some are confessions to the sky, just to prove the heart still remembers what it lost. It took her 3 months to speak his name again. And even then, it was only to tell a story to a stranger who would never know him. The city she landed in was far enough. No one knew her face. No one called her Mama Efe. She was just another woman in the crowd, another voice in the market, another shadow among many. She rented a small room near the motor park. The walls were damp, and the mattress had a spring that stabbed her back at night, but it was hers. She paid for it with her own hands. With money from the stall she no longer spoke of, she took a job as a kitchen assistant in a local canteen. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep her busy, to make her hands tired enough that her heart wouldn't remember him when the sun went down. And still, some nights, it did. It wasn't longing. Not anymore. It was something colder. Like picking at a scar, not to reopen it, but to remind yourself it once bled. She began to write. Nothing poetic. Just thoughts. Fragments of memories. She bought a small blue notebook and began each entry with the same words. Today, I remembered the man I once fed. Some days that's all she wrote. Other days, the words poured like floodwater. She didn't write to keep him alive. She wrote to bury him properly and slowly. It worked. The ache dulled. The shame softened. One day, while helping the canteen owner prep for a burial catering job, she was asked to cook her version of jollof rice. "You from the West, Abby?" the woman asked. "They say your people know rice." She smiled for the first time in weeks, and when she cooked, something inside her woke up. Not because of him, but because of her. Because once, long before betrayal, long before waiting, she had loved cooking for its own sake. The smell of tomatoes frying, the hiss of oil, the sharp dance of pepper in her nose. It was hers. And it came from no man. She was no longer a waiting woman. She was a woman becoming again. Back in Ayetoro, the dry season had turned the roads to dust. The compound stood quiet. His mother's house half renovated, half forgotten. Tajuddin stayed another month before heading back to Abuja. His wife had grown distant, not in anger, but in quiet disinterest. She could feel the guilt in his bones, even though he never told her the whole story. She asked once while folding laundry, "Did you love her?" He had replied, "Yes." She never asked again. At the airport, he bought a notebook from a newsstand. He had never written a journal before. But he opened the first page and wrote, "The woman I wronged has left me behind, and I deserve it." He never tried to call Aoife, not because he couldn't, but because he wouldn't. She had earned her silence. He wouldn't stain it with one more apology. Instead, he made a habit. Every Sunday, he'd write her a letter, never sent, and burn it. He did this for years, each flame eating away the pieces of a past he could never fix. 4 years passed. 4 years without her name spoken between them. 4 years of silence that weighed more than words ever could. And then one day, they met again. It was at a funeral in Ilorin, a distant cousin of hers, an old schoolmate of his. She had come to help serve food. He had come out of respect. She didn't recognize him at first. He had aged, grown a beard, gained weight, but he saw her immediately. She wore a plain brown wrapper, her hair covered. Her hands moved quickly, serving plates, wiping sweat from her brow. But her face still held that quiet knowing. He stood there, plate in hand, not moving, and she looked up. Their eyes met. No shock, no anger, just stillness. Then she smiled. A soft, tired smile, the kind given to ghosts that no longer haunt. She walked over, stood before him. "Tajuddin," she said. It was the first time she'd spoken his name in 4 years. He opened his mouth, then closed it. She handed him a bottle of water. "You look well," she said. "Your wife?" "Gone," he replied. 3 years now. We separated, she nodded. No glee, no sympathy, just quiet understanding. "I heard you opened a catering school," he said. "I did," she said. "We teach young women how to cook, how to earn without waiting for anyone to save them." He lowered his head. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. She smiled again, but this time it reached her eyes. "I'm proud of me too," she said. They stood there a moment longer. He wanted to ask if she was happy, if she ever forgave him, if some part of her heart still remembered what they once had, but he didn't. Some questions die better unanswered. He stepped back. "Take care of yourself." "Efe," and she replied with finality and peace, "I already am." That night, as the last guests left the funeral and the compound lights dimmed, Efe sat alone under the mango tree, notebook in hand. She wrote only one sentence. "Love that waits blindly often walks alone. But a woman who walks away walks stronger." Then she closed the book, looked up at the sky, and smiled, not for him, for herself.